The Chinese interest in Australian farmland is certainly understandable. As the Asian giant continues to grow, it's looking more and more for food security for its population, but also for energy security as well. And some of these farms could well prove to have rich deposits of coal beneath their soil. But Australian politicians are worried, not just Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott, but independents, Tony Windsor, Rob Oakeshott, Nick Xenophon, Bill Heffernan, also raising concerns about this. The government, as we heard Julia Gillard say there, is now looking at state title deeds to work out nationally just how much farmland is owned by foreign interests. On the mining tax, though, the government is not budging. Julia Gillard made that very clear today, saying that the mining tax that's being put before Parliament and she hopes will be legislated is not changed from the deal that she struck with the big miners when she first became Prime Minister. The opposition, though, is very worried about this mining tax, and today a coalition-dominated Senate report was released by the Shadow Assistant Treasurer Mathias Cormann. It finds that the mining tax is actually going to cost the budget bottom line. To tell us why, Senator Cormann joins us now. Thanks for your time. You've said the mining tax in this report will create a $19 billion budget black hole. How do you reach that conclusion?
Well, I mean, the government has been very clever because they clearly wanted to create the illusion of an early surplus in the lead up to the last election, where they were clearly exposed as a high spending, high taxing, big debt and deficit government. So they came up with this tax design which generated a lot of revenue in the early years, in the years that were included in the budget papers, making a whole series of commitments and promises, like to introduce a company tax cut, like phasing in an increase in compulsory super to 12% over a 10-year period. But of course most of those costs are in the budget beyond the forward estimates, and what we've done through our committee, we have assessed on the basis of information in the public domain, on the basis of information in the budget papers, we have assessed what the cost is likely to be over the next decade, and our very conservative estimate is that the cost of all of those commitments the government has made directly linked to the mining tax is about $57 billion, and of course over that same period Treasury modelling at the time of the mining tax deal indicated that it would raise $38.5 billion. So that leaves a $19 billion black hole over the next decade, which comes on top of the $2 billion black hole which was created when the state government in Western Australia decided.
I'll get to that. So you're basing this on the Treasury modelling over a 10-year period as to what the mining tax is going to generate. The Treasury boss at the time, Ken Henry, though, said that the figures are poor quality. There's much uncertainty attached to them, particularly the figures in the out years.
Well, we are basing our assessment on the best available information. If the government has got better information in front of them, then they should share it with us. And they've, of course, been very secretive with all of this. We can only go by the information we've got. The point here is we have currally the best terms of trade. But you've said
yourself, Mathias Cormann, that there's poor reliability about these figures. You've said that yourself.
Well, as I'm saying, we are dealing here with Treasury modelling, and what we need to focus on here is that right now we've got the best terms of trade in 140 years. So revenue from the mining tax is comparatively high. What we've seen so far is that the revenue from the mining tax is going to be highly volatile. It will fluctuate based on exchange rate changes, commodity price changes, changes in production volumes, and so on. Right now we are at a high point. Over the next decade, and that is what Treasury is expecting, revenue from the mining tax will continue to trend downwards. Yet the expense of the related commitments, like the commitment to increase compulsory super to 12%, to introduce a company tax cut, that cost will continue to increase over the next decade. There is no doubt about it. The question now is by how much. And of course what we've done is we've made an assessment based on the best available information, and our assessment is that this will result in a $19 billion shortfall over the next decade. Now I call on Wayne Swan. If he's got better data, he should come clean with the Australian people, and he should tell us what the shortfall is going to be, because the Finance Minister, Penny Wong, today has refused to guarantee that there will not be a shortfall beyond the forward estimates when she was questioned about this on the ABC today.
Well, let me go to your recommendations then in this report. You say, of course, don't go ahead with this mining tax. But then if I can go to recommendation 7, you say even if the Parliament does go ahead with the mining tax, which is subject to high volatility, increase, reduce over time, as you've just pointed out. If the Parliament does still pass it, you're saying it should not go ahead, if it still passes the mining tax, it should not go ahead with the company tax cuts and the superannuation increase that are attached to this. Instead, the money from that mining tax should be used to pay down debt. Is that right?
Well, I mean, that is the recommendation that we've made. You've just read it out. I mean, we think that this is a bad tax which came out of a deeply flawed process, so we don't think the Parliament should pass it. However, if the Parliament disagrees with us on that assessment, then it would be, we believe, quite reckless and quite irresponsible to go along with Labor's plans to link the revenue from this tax to spending commitments and to the cost of other commitments that will continue to go up over the next decade and beyond. Because
so
this
does that
is
mean the coalition is now opposed to a cut in the company tax rate?
Well, I'm presenting you here. We are opposed to the mining tax. We are opposed to the mining tax legislation as it's been put forward by the government. We think it should be scrapped. The coalition is a party, of course, that stands for lower taxes and smaller government without linking it either to a carbon tax or to a mining tax. We don't think that you should target one particular industry which is very important to our economic prosperity moving forward. We don't think you should target in an ad hoc fashion one industry and use that in order to make the budget less stable from a fiscal point of view and expose the government to a significant increased structural deficit over the next decade.
Can I ask you about Bob Brown's report today? It was worried about the foreign ownership of mining. It said that 83% of the mining industry in Australia is foreign owned and $50 billion over the next 5 years in profits will go offshore. Does that worry you?
Well, what I'm worried about is that Bob Brown is the effective Deputy Prime Minister in this government. Julia Gillard might be the Prime Minister, but Bob Brown is calling the shots, and these statements are just completely reckless and irresponsible. I mean, let's just be very clear on this. We are blessed with many resources across Australia, but hidden and undiscovered in the ground without extracting them, those resources don't have much value for us. We need foreign investment in order to maximise the opportunities that come from having those resources here in Australia. And of course, we need to keep the mining industry strong because that helps to maximise our economic prosperity and our quality of life moving forward. And what Bob Brown is suggesting, which is to tax the mining industry to a point where we will not continue to maximise those opportunities, is just completely irresponsible. We need to have an internationally competitive taxation regime so that we can continue to attract international investment, so that we can continue to maximise our opportunities which comes from developing our mining industry to its full potential.
Just a final question, Senator. While you've said there that you support that foreign investment in mining, we have heard growing concern about foreign investment in Australian farmland, in agricultural land. What's the concern there, particularly?
Well, I mean, there are some concerns there, and I mean, I think one particular concern is that there is a lack of transparency around the information. I think that in relation to the investment in publicly listed companies, mining companies and so on, it's very transparent as to who is who in the zoo. But in relation to ownership of farmland, there are obviously some other considerations attached to it. But one of the key concerns is that there seems to be inadequate information available as to who exactly is investing in what. And I certainly think that we need to make sure moving forward that we improve the transparency of that information.
All right, Shadow Assistant Treasurer Mathias Cormann, good to talk to you. Thanks for that.